Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will be starting the public hearing momentarily. Mahalo. Aloha, thank you for joining us today. It is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, and I have 3:02 p.m. and this public hearing is now called to order. This is a formal public hearing on the proposed adoption of Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 13-60.XX relating to the Miloli'i Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area, Hawaii, referred to as the Miloli'i CBSFA. The proposed rule would establish fishing regulations for Miloli'i CBSFA, which will be discussed in more detail a little later on in this meeting. The proposed rules are available on the DAR website, which can be accessed by following the link in the YouTube video description. Links should also appear in the chat as well. My name is Brian Nielsen. I'm the administrator for the Division of Aquatic Resources, and I will be conducting today's public hearing. I also have staff helping out with Zoom logistics, Diana Lopera, the Holomoa Marine 30x30 Program Planning Associate, and Anita Singh, University of Hawaii Sea Grant Fellow, that will be assisting today. So the purpose of the hearing is to provide the public the opportunity to provide comments in the form of oral and written testimony on these proposed administrative rules relating to the Miloli'i CBSFA. I hope that everyone who wishes to provide oral testimony has already signed up for the emailing, have already signed up by emailing your information to dlnr.aquatics@hawaii.gov. And again, that email address should be in the chat and on the YouTube link. If you have not, please do so as soon as possible, and you will receive a response with directions on how to join the Zoom online meeting. You can also find the email address in the chat, on the YouTube description, or in one of the Zoom attendees screen. When it's time to testify, I will call the names in the order that we have received your email requests, but first we will provide some background information on the proposal. So we'll now be transitioning to the background information, and then we'll move into the testimony portion of this hearing.
I think if you...
In 2005, Miloli'i became the first permanent legislatively In 1994, the state legislature enacted Act 271, codified as Hawaii Revised Statutes, or HRS Section 188-22.6, which authorizes DLNR to designate community-based subsistence fishing areas, referred to as CBSFAs, through administrative rulemaking, quote, for the purpose of reaffirming and protecting fishing practices customarily and traditionally exercised for purposes of Native Hawaiian subsistence, culture, and religion, end quote. The statute provides requirements and criteria for the submission of CBSFA designation proposals and management plans to DLNR for consideration. In 2005, Miloli'i became the first permanent legislatively designated CBSFA in Hawaii through Act 232. From 2015 to 2020, Kalani Hale, a grassroots nonprofit organization formed by the families and residents of Miloli'i, held numerous publicly advertised community workshops and meetings to provide on-island community outreach and engagement to discuss the Miloli'i CBSFA proposal. Upon careful review of the draft management plan and following the numerous community-led public workshops and meetings, DLNR's Division of Aquatic Resources, also known as DAR, conducted its own statewide public scoping on December 16, 2021, where DAR staff received numerous questions, comments, and suggestions. In February of 2020, following the DAR-led statewide public scoping, DAR received a finalized proposal, management plan, and administrative record from Kalani Hale for the designation of the Miloli'i CBSFA to ensure abundant stocks of priority species and high-quality fishing now and in the future for residents and visitors of Miloli'i, and to reaffirm and perpetuate fishing practices that were customarily and traditionally exercised for Native Hawaiian subsistence, culture, and religion along the southwest coast of Hawaii Island. The proposed CBSFA extends from Paʻakai Point at Kīpāhoehoe in the north to Kaunā in the south, from the shoreline out to the 100-fathom depth contour, and includes the following subzones: the ʻŌpelu Traditional Management Zone, the Puʻuhonua Pāpā, the Pākuʻikuʻi Rest Area, Puakaiʻa Miloliʻi, the Puʻuhonua Honomalino, the Puʻuhonua Kapuʻa, the Puʻuhonua Manukā. The proposed rules would establish bag limits, size limits, seasonal closures, and/or gear restrictions for ʻaʻamo crab, kole, opihi, Pākuʻikuʻi, uhu, ula, and ʻūʻū within the CBSFA, prohibit the take of marine life for aquarium purposes within the entire CBSFA, establish additional restrictions on certain activities and species within the designated subzones, provide an exception allowing vessels in possession of restricted gear or species to traverse through the CBSFA as long as they remain in active transit, identify authorized administrative, criminal, and civil penalties for violations of this new chapter, and provide notice of the state's authority to utilize civil asset forfeiture as an enforcement tool for violations of this new chapter. At the Board of Land and Natural Resources meeting on February 25th, 2022, the board approved these rules to go to public hearing. However, the board amended the approvals to conduct this public hearing have been obtained from the Board of Land and Natural Resources on February 25th, 2022, and from Governor Ige on March 16th, 2022. As mentioned earlier, the proposed rules are available on the DAR website, which can be accessed by following the link in the YouTube video description. The legal notice of this public hearing was published in the March 20th, 2022 Sunday issue of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This hearing will be conducted as follows. I will explain the proposed rules. Then the public hearing officer will call on those who have signed up to testify in the order that we have received their email requests. Please keep your testimony brief and on the subject in order to allow all those who signed up the opportunity to testify. Each person will be given up to 3 minutes to provide their testimony. After those who signed up have presented their testimonies, and if time allows, we will open up the testimony to those wanting additional time for testimony. Please note that we are recording this hearing. In order to facilitate accurate record keeping, please state your name and place of residence before giving your testimony, and please speak clearly into the microphone. Upon conclusion of this hearing, this recording will become part of the administrative record and will be made publicly available. Please remember to respect the opinions of all testifiers. This hearing is not an opportunity for accusations or rebuttals. There may be differing opinions. Please direct your testimony to the public hearing officer only. I will now provide an overview of the proposed administrative rules. The proposed rules establish fishing regulations for the Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area, Hawai'i. Section 13-60.XX-1 describes the purpose of this new rule chapter. Section 13-60.XX-2 provides definitions for a number of key terms used in this chapter, including the names of regulated marine life and the various types of regulated fishing gear and methods. Section 13-60.XX-3 delineates the boundaries of the Miloli CBSFA to include the portion of the southwest coast of Hawai'i Island, consisting of all state waters and submerged lands from Paʻakai Point at Kīpāhoehoe in the north to Kaunā in the south, from the shoreline out to the 100-fathom depth contour. The ʻŌpelu Traditional Management Zone, the Puʻuhonua Pāpā, the Pākuʻikuʻi Rest Area, Puakaiʻa Miloliʻi, the Puʻuhonua Honomalino, the Puʻuhonua Kapuʻa, and the Puʻuhonua Manukā are established as subzones within the Miloli CBSFA. We will discuss the various subzones later on in this presentation. Section 13-60.XX-4 prescribes the permitted and prohibited activities within the Miloli CBSFA. The regulations in this section have been crafted to set stricter bag limits, size limits, and gear restrictions to prevent over-harvesting while allowing for the continuance of fishing and harvesting practices that are customarily and traditionally exercised for Native Hawaiian subsistence, culture, and religion within the area. Within the CBSFA, it will be prohibited to take or possess ʻāʻama crabs with eggs, to take or possess any kole, to take or possess more makaiauli and ʻalinalina with shell attached than can fit in a 1-gallon sized bag per person per day, take or possess more than 2 ula or spiny lobster per person per day. It will be prohibited to take or possess any u'u, also known as minpachi, from April through June, take or possess any Pākuʻikuʻi or kole less than 5 inches in length, with a maximum allowable take or possession of 1 Pākuʻikuʻi per person per day, and a maximum allowable take or possession of 20 kole per person per day. Take or possess any kole during the closed spawning season of March through June. It will be prohibited to spear any uhu at night using any gear type. Take or possess any uhu ele or uhu uli. Take or possess any uhu ahu'ula or uhu pāluka during the months of March through May. Take or possess more than 1 uhu ahu'ula or uhu pāluka per person per day during the open season of June through February. And take or possess more than 3 of any other uhu, provided that only one of the 3 may be a terminal phase uhu. Additionally, it will be unlawful for any person to engage in the act of aquarium fishing or to take marine life for aquarium purposes within the CBSFA. This section also recognizes that Native Hawaiian traditional and customary rights recognized under Article 12, Section 7 of the Hawaii State Constitution shall not be abridged. Section 13-60.XX-5 prescribes the activities that are allowed and prohibited in the following areas. The ʻŌpelu Traditional Management Zone extends from Nā Pohaku Loloa in the north to Kakiʻo Point in the south, from the shoreline out to the 100-fathom depth contour. Within the ʻŌpelu Traditional Management Zone, it will be unlawful to take any ʻŌpelu using any method other than hook and line fishing from February through August. Puʻuhonua Pāpā extends from Laiokamimi in the north to Makahiki Point in the south. Puʻuhonua Honomalino extends from Kapuʻau in the north to Puakaiʻa in the south. Puʻuhonua Kapuʻa extends from Kalapili in the north to Kakiʻo Point in the south. Puʻuhonua Manukā extends from Kamoi Point in the north to the south end of Manukā Bay, and all puʻuhonua extend from the shoreline out to the 100-fathom depth contour. Within the 4 puʻuhonua, all fishing will be prohibited except fishing from shore using throw net, scoop net, and hook and line fishing methods, fishing from a vessel using hook and line fishing method, fishing using a pole spear, and fishing for a kole pursuant to Hawaii Administrative Rules, Section 13-75-12.2 and Section 13-95-19. Additionally, it will be unlawful to harvest any opihi. The Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area is indicated by the striped orange line on the map. It extends from Makahiki Point in the north to Puakaiʻa in the south, from the shoreline to the 100-fathom depth contour, and overlaps the Puʻuhonua Honomalino and Puakaiʻa Miloliʻi subzones. Within the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area, it will be unlawful to take or possess any Pakuʻikuʻi. Puakaiʻa Miloliʻi is indicated by the area shaded light blue on the map. It extends from Kapukawa'aiki in the north to Lailoa in the south, from the shoreline to the 100-fathom depth contour. Within Puakaiʻa Miloliʻi, it will be unlawful to use or possess any spear except for a pole spear, to spear any uhu, Pākuʻikuʻi, bekeʻula, moanokea, or u'u, or to fish using a lay net at night. Please note that statewide rules already prohibit the use of lay nets at night. Section 13-60.XX-6 carves out an exception allowing vessels in possession of restricted gear or species to traverse through the CBSFA as long as they remain in active transit. Section 13-60.XX-7 establishes the administrative and criminal penalties that may be imposed for violations of this chapter. Section 13-60.XX-8 recognizes the state's asset forfeiture authority as an enforcement tool for violations of this chapter. This section will facilitate enforcement of this chapter by providing the department with the appropriate range of tools to deter violations. This concludes the overview of the proposed rules.
Okay, that wraps up the background. And so now we'll be moving on to the testimony portion of the public hearing. So everyone who has signed up to testify should already be admitted into the Zoom virtual meeting room. As I call your name, please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, and give your testimony. When you're giving testimony, please help us facilitate accurate record keeping by stating your name and place of residence. Also, please state clearly whether you support, oppose, or have no position on the proposed rule. Please keep your testimony to 3 minutes in order to ensure that everyone who signed up has a chance to give testimony. If there is extra time at the end of everyone on the list and you would like to provide more testimony, we'll allow those who've already spoke to give an additional 3-minute testimony. There's also the opportunity to provide written testimony if you can't quite capture it all in your oral testimony. We will now begin receiving testimony. I'm just going to end the show here and stop sharing And so now we'll move on to our testifiers list. And the first testifier is Kaimi Kaupiko. Kaimi, would you like to testify? Okay, I'm not hearing from Kaimi, so I'm going to go next on the list and we can go back to
Hi,
Kaimi.
Brian.
Okay, go ahead, Kaimi.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Sorry, it couldn't unmute my mic and video, so I hope it's working now. Okay, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear,
Kinda bad.
Kaimi. So go ahead, please proceed.
Thank you so much for letting me speak today. My name is Kaimi Kaupiko, and I am the director of our nonprofit Kalani Hale, and we are the organization that has put together this management plan and rules for the 18.6 miles of pristine ocean front from Kīpāhoehoe to Kaunā Point. This proposal is the hard work and dedication of our kupuna and who have laid the foundation for our community to put forth the efforts to malama traditional fishing practices in Miloli'i. This is our time and this is our promise to them. Ikawama mua kawama hope. The time in front is the time in back, looking to the time in people that have come before us as a source of knowledge that will carry us into the future. I'm a resident and lineal descendant of this community. The proposed rule package reflects our traditional practices passed down through generations of Hawai'i in Miloli'i, and I'm here to testify in support of the rules package for Miloli'i Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area with some comments. Miloli'i, of course, is known as one of the last Hawaiian fishing communities. We have a long-standing reputation as a place where old traditions, especially those of around fishing, are very present in the lives of our people. Our community is one of the last of its kind. Our ohana live simple lives with little in the way of material wealth and modern amenities. And so this is a place reminiscent of a lifestyle of past generations. Our community's origins are recalled through stories, legends, geologies, history, songs, chants. Most of our demographics of today is much as it has been for many generations. Fishing remains a dominant occupation and most of our residents are Native Hawaiian. Our CBSFA was designated in 2005, and then in 2019, we worked with you to provide a process for us to create the rules. And our time is here. Traditional and customary fishing practices are reflected in the rule package, placing kapu on unsustainable harvest methods. We have set forth a compelling protection standards in our narrative and rule package, which align well and reflect the conservation values and needs of neighboring conservation lands. We have been consistent in our narrative, proposed CBSFA rules package and practices, and further demonstrate their preparedness to co-manage and co-govern the CBSFA with agencies and partners. Our CBSFA Marine Management Organizational structure will be established to maintain the community's collaborative relationship with agencies and partners. We have a Mohala na Konehiki Miloli'i, which will represent the community place-based knowledge and narrative, continuing their traditional methods of area monitoring and surveying and incorporating modern methods. I just wanted to add for requests is that particularly with the recommendation of Pakuʻikuʻi, we support the rest zone from Makahiki Point to Pāpā to Kapalau Point. And we also support the Pakuʻikuʻi species rule to reflect that of what Miloli community designate as they are the generational stories of Miloli of Kapalilua. So with that, I just wanted to mahalo you all for my time to share about this day for us. So mahalo.
Okay, mahalo for your testimony, Kaimi. Next up, we have Uilani Naipo. And please proceed.
Elena Mai, mahalo for this opportunity. I'm Uilani Naipo, and I'm here testifying in support of the rules package for Miloli'i CBSFA with recommendations. I'm a lineal descendant, granddaughter of Eugene Kiaweiki and Sarah Kapela Kaupiko. I can trace my ma'okuauhau to a time before Western contact here in Hawaii, and my ohana, kaupiko, pohina, kaliuna have always populated Kapalilua. From Alae, Haukalua, Kaʻohe, down into Waiuhinu Ka'u, but most notably, Pāpā, Ho'opuloa, Miloliʻi, and Kapuʻa. My ohana, among others, are the generational stewards of Kapalilua. Today, we continue to awamo our kuleana to Malama'aina, caring for the marine resources of this place. We continue to feed and maintain the koa of this coastline in the same way our kupuna have for many generations. Miloliʻi received its CBSFA designation in 2005, and here we are today with a proposed rules package. Today, I'm here providing testimony in support of the rules package with the following supportive comments. Our traditional and customary fishing practices are reflected in the rules package, placing kapu on unsustainable harvest methods. The landmarks used by our kupuna are the same landmarks we use today, and some have been incorporated into the rules package as boundaries for our CBSFA subzones. Our protection standards we state in our narrative and in our rules package align with and reflect the standards of our neighboring Aina Maluo, conservation lands managed by both state agencies and non-government organizations, that of Kīpāhoehoe and Manukā. While requesting approval to hold this public hearing, the rules package proposed by our community was modified. Therefore, I provide two comments, specifics on the rules package regarding those changes. First, Miloliʻi appeals for kapuloa no take of Pakuʻikuʻi throughout the CBSFA to be established until an agreed upon sunset date. This highest level of protection from kanaka behavior is our commitment and our sacrifice to assisting the recovery of their abundance. I support the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area. This is the second one. I support the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area to be designated from Makahiki Point Pāpā to Kapulau Point Honomalino, as Honomalino Bay is already designated as a Puʻuhonua subzone. I'm reminded and shared with all the specific language for designation of a community-based subsistence fishing area and its intent for the purpose of reaffirming and protecting fishing practices customarily and traditionally exercised for the purpose of Native Hawaiian subsistence, culture, and religion. Let us not scope creep from that definition and intent. Miloli is our home, our piko, and we are mauli au honua of this place. We malama our aina and we feed our people. Mahalo for allowing me to provide this testimony. Aloha.
Mahalo. Next up, we have Lei Kaupu. Please proceed, Lei.
Aloha mai kākou. I am Leivlin Kaupu and I'm a descendant of Kapalilua, and I testify in support of the rules package for Miloli'i Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area with recommendations. O Kapalilua ka aina hanau he moku, kilakila mauna loa kua hiwi nani o Hawai'i, kaima oki oki ku'ukai, o ke hau kamakani I puliki ai ko kako aina hanau. My ohana and I are generational stewards of Miloli'i, specifically o Moka'a Ho'opuloa and Alika Pāpā. Our kupuna and ohana have always been well established in this area of Miloli'i, Ho'opuloa, and throughout Kapalilua. I personally have seen social and economic changes throughout my homeland and have experienced technological advancement, as well as a huge increase in development and daily tourist visitation that has impacted not only our lifestyle and way of living, but most importantly, our natural resources that sustain us today. Today, we continue to awamo our kuleana to Malama'aina, caring for the marine resources of this place. We continue to feed and maintain the ko'a, specifically the ʻŌpelu ko'a of this coastline in the same way our kupuna have done for generations. We are granted CBSFA designation in 2005, and in 2019, Kalani Hale represented our subsistence fishing village, making it known that we were ready to create a rules package. Today, I am here providing testimony in support of the rules package. While requesting approval to hold this public hearing, the rules package proposed by our community was modified. Therefore, I'm here to provide recommendations on two specifics of the rules package regarding those changes. I support the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area to be designated from Makahiki Point, Pāpā to Kapulao Point. Honomalino as Honolulu Bay is designated as a Puʻuhonua subzone. Miloli appeals for Kapuloa no-take of Pakuʻikuʻi throughout the CBSFA to be established until an agreed upon sunset date. This highest protection from Kanaka behavior is our commitment to assisting the recovery of their abundance. On behalf of my ohana and I, mahalo again for allowing us this time and space to share our testimony. Again, I testify in support of the rules package of Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area with recommendations. E mako na kaua o ke kai, no ke kūpali pele o ka palilua, no ke ao ho'ovili o ke awa. E mako na kaua o ke kai, no ka lihau o ke hau, no ka ahapa'a o ka milo. E mako na kaua o ke kai, pi ko'u mai ka aina a ke kai. I molo mai ka hua a ka mai. Aloha me ka pono o ke kai e. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next up, we have Laila Kaupu.
Yeah.
You can proceed when you're ready, Laila.
Sweet. Aloha kako, mahalo nui. I'm Laila Kaupu, a lineal descendant of Miloli'i, and I am here on behalf of the community in support of the Miloli'i CBSFA. Aloha Miloli'i, ka aina o ka palilua, he puna vai o ka noeau o na opio o kaumuali'i. E o mai e nā kupuna, e o mai e nā aumakua, e o mai e ke akua. E pā mai ana ka makani aloha ua lo'ohia I ka mana o ke ia aina. Pua ana ke ia mele no ka palilua, ka aina kaulana no na lawai'a, ku ha'aheo a mauloa. I am the great-granddaughter of Nancy and John Apo, the granddaughter of Eleanor and Waha Grace, the daughter of Viola and Levi Kaupu. My name is Leilin Laila Charlene Leinoa Apo Grace Kaupu. I am born of Omaka'a, raised in Miloli'i, and now live in the Miloli'i Ho'opuloa housing lots, specifically designated for the relocated families of the 1926 Ho'opuloa lava flow. I am a lineal descendant of these Ili'aina in the moku of Kapalilua. I come from a long line of Lawai'a, a Konahiki apprentice under the keen guidance of Uncle Mac Poi Poi, mahalo nui, and my kupuna, seen and unseen. Today, I am an outreach kako'o for Kalani Hale, a nonprofit organization based out of Miloli'i. Today, I stand before you, Dar and DLNR, for my kupuna, for my aina, and for my keiki, Cyrus, Pohaku, Luaiki, Kema, Kurimau, Kaupu, in support of the Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area Management Plan, but with comments, recommendations, and a few mo'olelo to tell. Miloli'i. 2 stories whispered no longer. Here today, I tell one of land and one of sea. Today of land, story of land talks of how this little village was known of weaving, twisting, and creating the finest of Senate rope made of olona and milo for lawai'a, kalaiva'a, hale builders, and so much more. Kaunā. Story of sea talks of how the awa is the gathering place of the swirling nutrient-rich kona and ka'u currents, the swirling currents filled with life. Kaunā loa. The only way for the state to learn this and understand it fully is through the lens of the communities and the Hawaiian values, aloha aina, malama aina, which emphasizes that intergenerational inheritance of stewardship, not just aina, land and sea, but all the in-betweens and the care for aina, that in which feeds. With all this being said, I support the original intended Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area from Point to Pāpā, Makahiki Point in Pāpā to Kapulao Point in Honomalino, with a kahea to the masses of placing a kapuloa or no take of Pakuʻikuʻi within the entire CBSFA to be placed until an agreed upon time to lift the kapu. As a Mohalana Konehiki apprentice, this is my commitment to assist and grow in recovery of their abundance. Miloli'i is our home, our piko, and we are Mauliao Honua,
of this place. We malama our aina and feed our people. Mahalo for allowing me to provide this testimony. Mahalo.
Mahalo. So our next testifier is Kolomona Kaho'ohalahala.
Hi, aloha. Aloha, Brian. My name is Kolomona Kaho'ohalahala. My Lanai mai. I'm from the island of Lanai. I'm here to strongly support the rules that have been made for the Miloli'i CBSFA. And I wanted to just reiterate and say that I support all of the previous testifiers who are lineal descendants of Miloli'i, and especially their recommendations to make the amendments regarding the kapuloa and bring that in because they know best about how to manage their area. And in their comments about helping us to understand the purposes of the kapuloa is also good for us in the general community to understand how management works with that kind of foresight by the people who are the caretakers of their places. So I only wanted to add that I think it's unfortunate that it takes such a long time for these kinds of areas to be given consideration in light of the fact that this was recognized as a CBSFA many years ago. And here we are now, more than 10 years later down the road, trying to just come about with rules. But one consideration I would like the hearing officer as well as DLNR to consider is that we are talking about places like you mentioned, these are traditionally and customarily practice spaces. And these are the kinds of traditions that have been used by our people for generations. And in the Miloli'i and area specifically, their practices are practices that are part of the heritage of our cultural fabric in Hawaii. And so these kinds of practices should be given special consideration. In fact, they are part of the heritage that is handed down, and had it not been for the family members that are continuing to carry on those traditions, they would be lost. So we have in the state of Hawaii acknowledgement for special areas. We have special monuments. We have special kinds of environments. I think serious consideration should be given for special traditional practices in fisheries that are found nowhere else and that are intended specifically to help subsist and support those communities and to feed the greater community. And therefore, the state of Hawaii should give acknowledgement to that, and they should be supporting these efforts. And with that, I want to say I fully support the rules and the amendments as suggested by the people from Miloli'i. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Charles Young.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Charles Young. I reside in Kealia, which is a few ahupua north of the northern boundary of the Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area designation. And I'm here to fully support Miloli'i in its efforts and its rules packages, either as amended or as originally thought, but as amended because I support the community. Let me first say that I was first introduced into fishing in Miloli'i in 1979. And were it not for some of the families at Miloli'i, I would have never had that privilege. I continue to fish the area. And my three children learned to fish from there over 30 years ago. One of the first things the Miloli'i fishermen introduced me to were the boundaries, taking me out to Kaunā and out to Two Stone to tell me this is where we fish everything within these boundaries is sufficient to support us. We don't need to go outside. The management package or the management rules at those times, as it was explained to me, was take what you need for your family's table and make sure you leave plenty for us. It was that simple. We are now not at that point. Obviously, it's going to be taking more management rules. I want to also point out that in 1998, the West Hawaii Regional Fishing Management Area was established, which is a FMA that extends from Upolu Point to south in Kalai, from the north. So it's all of West Hawaii. The Miloli community was key in providing community support and community input into establishing that FMA. And now Miloli is here actually building upon those efforts of the FMA to take responsibility for their significant portion down on the south side. The FMA, the West Hawaii Regional Fishing Management Area designation, was also proposed by the state, accepted by the state. So Miloli is building upon something that was established, not just community-based subsistence fishing area designation, but a larger picture of trying to manage fisheries in a broader context. So I think that should be noted as well in terms of their proposals. I think the final thing I want to talk about is that word subsistence. Subsistence, defines, I think, specifically perhaps Native Hawaiian gathering rights and some of the protections under the Constitution. But in terms of a subsistence, it's a usage. It's probably more looked at as a usage. But I think as a management goal, we should be managing towards abundance and not just subsistence. And I think these kinds of proposals from the communities actually build upon those, to that abundance. Mahalo very much, and aloha to all my friends in Miloli. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Kavika Winter. Go ahead, Kavika.
Relina mai kākou, aloha mai e ka upu mā e ka piko mā. Aloha. Aloha Brian, mahalo no kia ha'i mana'o ana kākou ana wau I kia mea o ka Miloli CBSFA no o ahu au ole no kona a kāno na'e pili wau ke la aina o ka parilua ma o kia kupuna nei o ana kala erika nā ku tutu ho'okama no ho'i. He lala au ma ka hui o Ialu Pū, ke kai o ke kinohi o ke la hui aia ma ka makahiki I lua kaukani me kolu. Ua ako maila o ana kala meak me ke kai o ka po'e kupuna, o kia kupuna ne ke kai o lako I ako mai I Molokaʻi. Nā lako no I ho'oholo I kia alehele a mako I hahaini kia la o ka lawai apono. Ua haihei mai mākou I kia alehele noa hiki ke la. Kumai ne mākou I nei me ke kāko'o no kia mea o ka lawai apono a me mao kia mea o ka Miloli CBSFA. No leila he nui ku ha'aheo, ku ha'a e ha'i aku me ko'u kāko'o. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Desmond Haumea.
Aloha mai kākou, haumea ke ia. Lineal descendant of Kanaloa Nui Akea, of the second va'a that tied up over 1,000 years ago in Ka'u. My family eventually ended up in Ho'okena, e Haumo, eventually settled in Wainiha. I am full support in its entirety. What I want to talk about is the illegal occupation of the Kingdom of Hawaii, forced into these rules and regulations. The people of Miloli and all of our Kanaka are the evidence of the criminal activity. The reason I say that is because Miloli is not the last fishing village. It is our last chance to create a laboratory for sustainability. I would suggest that DLNR, DR be courageous and brave in their endeavors to identify these areas that are not polluted, that is still pristine as our ancestors, when they arrived to these shores, they flourished and demonstrated sustainability in its entirety. That was taken from us, especially in 1959, when agriculture was replaced by tourism. In the tourism books, you can see, go visit the last fishing village. I think it's our last chance to demonstrate to the global community that this is the process presented by our kupuna. And these children, these kekiʻokaʻena or Miloli, are the ones that we should be visiting with and learning from, not having them jump through hoops to go through these rules and regulations. They already have that. It's in the koko already. So I would suggest that the state of Hawaii acknowledge the illegal occupation and the criminal activity placed upon our kupuna. Their kupuna pathways and ancestral realm has been here over 1,000 years. And that's all they're doing right now, is carrying this knowledge forward. And as I said earlier, establish a UNESCO site. Malama Honua, we stated that Hawaii should be the laboratory for sustainability, not tourism. Allow our people in Miloli to demonstrate to the global community what it is to survive with your natural resources. E maruru te atua te ora matua re hare mai te puri tātou, te puri roa tātou. Honor our kupunas, honor our ancestors, honor the people that's trying to protect and preserve our kupuna pathways embedded in the ancestral realm. Eo, mahalo nui, aloha na ohana e Miloli. I'll be there soon. Mahalo, DLNR, DAR. Yes, upu.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Maki Morinoe.
Aloha. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Maki Morinoe. I'm a fourth generation Japanese American from Holualoa, Ahupua'a. I'm here to testify in support of the rules package for Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area with strong recommendations for amendments. The Miloli's proposed rules package being modified is not the best that DLNR, DAR can do to really ensure proper protection. I strongly support the recommendations from the Miloli community on 2 points of the rules. To support the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area to be designated from Makahiki Point, Pāpā, to Kapuʻau Point. Honomalino as Honomalino Bay is designated as a Puʻuhonua subzone. To support the Pakuʻikuʻi species rule to reflect that of what Miloli community designates as they are the generational stewards of Kapalilua. My mother frequently visited Mr. Eugene Kopiko, who ran the store when she brought down tourists to this location in the early 1970s. She recently shared many fond memories with me and was surprised at all the development along the mountain slopes. Growing up fishing along the shorelines, I'm the firsthand witness to the degradation of an extractive behavior around profit over maintaining our ocean health. Our land to sea relationships from the 70s till today has left a scar on our reef and is now showing signs of the direction of food collapse. With the introduction of aquarium hunting from the late 1960s and the expansion of our tourist zones for development plays a major role in where we are today around coral health. The cultural practice we experience in Miloli'i and Ho'okena is quite remarkable to observe and is quite hopeful. I want to publicly give my mahalo to the Miloli'i community for taking the time to educate and organize to get this island to this point. I want to mahalo DAR and for this collaboration. Let's not take 30 years. Let's support what Miloli'i is asking for. I am also for managing towards abundance and for Miloli'i being the first laboratory for sustainability. Mahalo for your time.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Mahina Paishan Duarte. Let's see. If Mahina isn't on, we'll move on to our next testifier, Jim Scansella. See, are you with us, Jim? Okay, if Jim's also not on, we'll go to our next testifier, Patrick Kahavai Ola'a. You with us, Patrick? Okay, if not, we'll go on to our next testifier, Nicole Crane. Okay, not hearing from Nicole either. Kevin Chang, are you on, Kevin? Okay, moving on to the next. Presley Wan.
Aloha kako. My name is Presley Wan. I am currently the president for Hui Makainana of Haena Kauai. I am a descendant of Haena Kauai, and I live in Wailua Homesteads. On behalf of the Hui Makainana o Makana Haena Kauai, we stand in strong support of Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area pursuit. They were instrumental, along with Momomi Molokai, Kipulu Maui, Ho'okana, Hawaii Island, and Haena Kauai in molding the template for Act 271 almost 15 years ago. This legislation acknowledges and reaffirms, and quoting from DAR/DLNR website, that a strong recognition that government cannot do it alone. Community-based management and buy-in is crucial to sustaining natural resources now and for generations to come. Community-based resources management, like our ancestors, is based in adaptability, which sustained us in our past. One of my good friends likes to say, the answers to the future is in our past. With climate change changing and ocean levels rising, affecting our fisheries, we cannot depend on our current generic one-size-fits-all rules and regulations handbook. Adaptability is crucial. In the past, we have spent time with the families of Miloli and know their commitment to become a CBSFA. Miloli'i, like Haena, are potentially living educational classrooms for generations to come. Miloli and other CBSFAs know their place well and should be recognized for their efforts and their traditional and cultural practices. For us in Haena, our CBSFA has been working. Based on our fishers' observations and reinforcement by DAR with collaborative scientific data, we are strong advocates for CBSFAs and hope to reach Hawaii's goal and statewide commitment to have 30% of Hawaiian waters managed by 2030. Mahalo for this opportunity to support Miloli's CBSFA. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Kali'i Alapa'i. Let's see, not hearing from Kali'i. Next up, Kanoe Alapa'i.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. This is Kali'i.
This is Kili'i.
Okay, please proceed.
Trying to get my, okay, here we go. Aloha mai kako, Brian, DLNR, DAR. I'd like to thank you folks for this opportunity to speak for Miloli'i community. I am in full support of their CBSFA ruling. I know it's been a long time going for us in Haiena. I'm from Haiena, Kauai. Hui makaina no o makana, Vice President. It's been a long time going for our people of this Aina, of our archipelago, to take care of what was taught to us, what was shown to us, what was there for us. You know, it's something really. It's if you look at it, it's something like it's really simple. We need to take care of our resources to be sustainable, to flourish, and to take care of everyone. So if we take the easy manao from our kupunas that was passed down through them to entice our place, our reefs, our paina, everything from Mauka to Makai. I really ask you folks humbly to really think about this and make the right decisions in taking care of Miloli'i just as much as you folks did for us in Haiena. We're the same thing. We're all going through this. I like to thank the people from Miloli'i, because if it wasn't for Miloli'i, for me, to see at first sight when we started our CBSFA in Haiena, I got really touched. And from that time on, that was my movement to help and to take care of our place, because it's gonna benefit our kikis, our moopunas, like I said. And so I really ask you folks humbly to please support the CBSFA for Miloli'i coming from Kauai. I thank you folks very much for your time. And Miloli'i, aloha, we love you folks. Thank you, Brian. Aloha.
Mahalo. Is Kanoi Alapai?
Kanoi stuck in traffic.
Okay.
So he's not going to be able to make it, but I said the words for him. Thank you.
Mahalo. Okay, our next testifier is Scott Crawford.
Aloha, Brian, and DAR staff and Miloli community. My name is Scott Crawford, and I'm here as the executive director for the Kīpāhoehoe Ohana, Inc. And as a similar grassroots community organization of Hawaiian practitioners who are also seeking to have Kīpāhoehoe Moku designated as a community-based subsistence fishing area. We want to express our strong support for the proposal rules set forth by the Miloli'i community, and mainly to just, you know, as we've been going through a kind of parallel process with Miloli'i over the past several years, we've had a lot of chance to observe their process, their community process for gathering input and developing the rules package proposal, and have just been so impressed by their thoroughness and thoughtfulness and inclusiveness to really come up with a rules package that is truly supported by the community and is truly coming from the ancestral, you know, generational knowledge of the traditional practitioners of that place. And this is just such powerful and important contribution to the overall effort to sustainably manage our shorelines and near shore waters. And so we just encourage DAR to move forward in support of this proposal, bringing it to the board, and say Imua Miloli.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Mahina Poipoi.
Hi, this is Mahina Poipoi. I can't turn my camera on. I hope that that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm a resident of Molokai. I am here to support the incredible efforts that have been put into the development, the outreach, and the advocacy throughout this proposal process. I support the rules and the incorporation of amendments as suggested by the Miloli'i descendants and earlier testifiers. As each CBSFA across the state is brought from concept to planning to implementation, we're beginning to restore a future of abundance for the next generations. This is a future that past actions and inactions have caused to deteriorate even before it's come to pass. So I kind of see these CBSFA efforts across the state. They're separate, but they're more connected than they are separate. It's like stitching together a patchwork quilt, and every piece added helps to make progress on ensuring healthy and thriving ecosystems across the state so that our future generations will be able to thrive and won't be deprived. This progress, I don't see progress as one directional. I think that sometimes it's important to see progress as regress, as going back to origins. And in the case of nearshore ocean resources, going back to place-based, culturally based traditions and practices and management. And I think this proposal is an example of that kind of progress that we want to see for our future. And just looking at the world right now and seeing like that we're experiencing all of these geopolitical vulnerabilities and instabilities, and with the pandemic and the war, we've witnessed and are witnessing the breakdown and the fragility of the globalized economy. And this kind of community-based effort is one of those things that can help to insulate our communities from the impacts of those global conditions. And I just have to say, like, because this has been a point of frustration across multiple DLNR processes, that we don't have time to pander and to placate to commercial self-interest. I am continually disheartened at the way that DAR and DLNR seem to do exactly that over and over again, and to the detriment of environmental and cultural and community well-being. I will wrap up if that is my time. I'll just end by saying that I'm in support, and thank you.
Mahalo. Our next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next testifier is Joseph Horton.
Good afternoon, Administrator Nielsen, members of the Department of Aquatic Resources, and fellow concerned Hawaii citizens. My name is Joseph Horton, and I reside in Paʻakai, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu, and have done so with my family since 2018. I'm a current LLM Master of Laws candidate studying environmental law at the University of Hawaii Richardson School of Law. I provide this testimony today to strongly support the proposed Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area and the regulations that would ensure the continued preservation of both the marine environment and traditional Native Hawaiian fishing practices of the Miloli area. It is my fervent belief that the Miloli CBSFA proposed regulations will go a long way in conserving the delicate marine environment in the nearshore waters off the Hawaii southwest coast. NOAA completed a 2019 study on the vulnerability of coral reefs to climate change in West Hawaii. That report revealed that the coral reefs located in the proposed Miloli CBSFA were very resilient to climate change, due in large part to the conservation efforts protecting herbivore fish like the uhu, Pākuʻikuʻi, and kole. A 2017 report from the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute found that the coral reefs grow faster and healthier when parrotfish like uhu are abundant. This is because they clean the coral of excess algae that often grows on weakened coral systems. By removing this excessive algae, uhu enabled the coral to bounce back from periodic bleaching events and grow stronger than before. A 2016 report from the University of Tasmania published in the Nature Journal also found that parrotfish had the same beneficial impact on the Great Barrier Reef. As such, any efforts to protect these fish from overfishing or taking should be supported. That said, fish like the uhu, Pakuʻikuʻi, and kole have long been a staple of Native Hawaiian fishers and their families in the area. Traditional fishing practices are well known to be far less destructive than Western commercial fishing analogs. Furthermore, traditional Native Hawaiian fishers know from generations of teaching how to best maintain local fisheries. They know the best time to catch these fish, the sizes at which the fish should be taken, and the catch limits which the stock can endure. The limits of the proposed regulations are based on the oral testimonies of many Miloli community residents, including dozens of local Native Hawaiian fishers who have fished the area for decades. As such, I trust the limits proposed will conserve not only the vital marine flora and fauna of the area, but also allow current and future generations of Native Hawaiian fishers to continue their traditional fishing practices, which provide food for their families and the education of future generations. Finally, I support the proposed regulations because they will allow the Miloli fishing community to flourish and grow. For 500 years, the residents of Miloli Fishing Village have fished these local waters. They've educated numerous generations of fishers, fed their families, and shared Native Hawaiian practices and customs with visitors who care to experience the living Hawaiian culture. Regulating the fishing in the Miloli area with the proposed regulations will allow the Miloli community to continue these vital efforts, protect constantly protected practices, and teach others of the Hawaiian culture and the importance of malama aina, taking care of the land. My only constructive comment on the proposed regulations is the adding of the definition for the term lay nets, as it is used in section 13-6.xx5. I'm not a fisher, but a lawyer by trade. I'm sure fishers know what a lay net is, but as a non-fisher, I do not. To ensure all understand the proposed regulations, I recommend that you add the definition to this term to ensure compliance for all. Thank you for your time.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Billy Kinney.
Aloha, can you hear me?
Yep. Please proceed, yeah.
Aloha. Yeah, ke aloha nui. Aloha from aloha Brian, aloha Diana Dar. Aloha to our Puʻuhonua Miloliʻi. I miss you all very much. My name is Billy Kinney. I live in Kilauea, Kauai, but I was born in Hanalei. I'm a lineal descendant of Lawaiʻa families of Hanalei and Haʻena, and I'm providing testimony today in support of Kalani Hale, the Miloliʻi community, and the Miloliʻi proposed rules. Of course, with the necessary modifications as previously communicated by lineal descendants regarding the Puʻuhonua modification and Pākuʻikuʻi species. By day, I'm a graduate student in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at UH Manoa. I focus and I work in Indigenous planning theory, but I also sit on the board for the Hui Maka'ainana o Makana in Haʻena. As you know, we're within our 5th year of our CBSFA. And I wanted to applaud Miloliʻi and call to attention their specificity, right, for their determination and their hard work in identifying critical resources, critical activities, and subzones with such detail within those 18.6 miles. But that amount of work is really astounding, and that fact should be considered by state agencies because they do reflect and they speak to traditional and customary fishing practices. And I could talk at length about the effects of CBSFA within Haʻena's fisheries, but for now I would illuminate one main implication, and that is the return of empowered, inspired, equipped lineal descendants, combined with this sort of growing participation by settlers, settler allies, partners, co-conspirators, and future kin, because that return of those maka'ainana, these new maka'ainana, is something that I pray for all of Hawaii's rural communities and fishing communities, that they will be able to see that sort of return of empowered, inspired, and equipped folks. One final thing I would like to point out to everyone for their consideration is the sort of dedication by Miloliʻi to integrate kilo, traditional observational practices, and Maoli a Honua practices into their management and their community skill set for adaptive management, but also for livable futures through cultivating new kilo, konohiki, and stewards. That is something that we can't lose sight of within the management landscape. We need to support forever and for everyone, because that is really the future of of adaptive management in Hawaii. And so I thank you for your considerations and the opportunity to share. Mahalo.
Mahalo. We'll go to our next testifier, William Mai Hui Hui. Please go ahead.
Aloha, Dar, Belenar, Ohana, friends. Aloha. My name is William Kaleonahu Mai Hui Hui. Lineal descendant of Labayo practitioners and an apprentice of Mahala na Konehiki. I stand in full support of our rules package with a few recommendations. First is the Pākuʻikuʻi Rest Zone. That area, I feel it should remain as is, from Paʻakai Point to the northern point of Honomalino, as well as our Miloli Ohana's appeal for the kapulua of our Pakuʻikuʻi throughout the CBSFA. We worked very hard with communities, friends, partners, and we feel that this would be a sacrifice that we're willing to take. And we know that we can try wait. It's okay, as long as it's to help preserve and conserve. One thing I wanted to share too is our kupuna set this foundation for us. They planted this tree knowing that they would not sit under its shade. This evening, as we share our mana'o and our hearts, this shade has grown, the tree has grown, its branches has reached out to multiple communities and affiliations. Our tree is still growing, and we know that it'll take not only our strength to nurture this, but as well as other communities, for it takes a village to raise a kid. And this kid is our CBSFA. With the gear restrictions, bag limits, and Puʻuhonua is a step towards better practices. With the species, closed season, open seasons, size limits, and rest zones, it's a step towards better management. There's also one more thing too, is we're the first generation to see the change in our climate change. And we're the last generation to make a difference. Where do you stand? I stand in full support of our rule package with the recommendations of our hui. Mahalo, plenty. Have a good evening.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Karen Poi Poi. You with us, Karen? Okay, I'll move on to Lisa Awan. Okay. We'll move on to Maka'ala Kaumoana.
Aloha and mahalo. I am Maka'ala Kaumoana and I live on Kauai. I support the previous testimony of all of the lineal descendants of Miloli'i and their recommendations for rule amendments. In the mid-1980s, our community became very concerned about the degradation of our cultural resources and began resistance actions and formation of several place-based organizations to address the situation. From that work and the focus on what needed to be done, CBSFA was born. This is the way, indeed the only way, to restore, protect, and manage our fisheries, our iceboxes, in a holistic and science-based way. Management of our resources is not a political dance trying to make the loud ones quiet and dodge the facts. Rome is burning while Dar is fiddling. We know Hawaii, DLNR, and Dar know the situation and want to do what is Pono for the resources, to manage the fisheries for the health of the ocean and the health of our people. If DLNR seeks more public support and wants to do their job better, meet their mission and kuleana, the only way is to partner with the people of the place, those who fish for food, those who know the resource top to bottom. CBSFA offers that collaboration, and these rules can make that happen. Haena has demonstrated the potential. Miloli'i is ready. This is not a them and us. This is all of us together, putting pono management, not fear and friction. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Steve Kaiser.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Kaiser. I'm a resident of Hawai'i in North Kohala. I had a long career in many things, but I'm back to commercial fishing again. And so I'll say this, while I support many of the proposed rules, I do recommend that it get modified. And I mean modified, I mean, we're talking 18 miles of coastline with a mishmash of different areas, different regulations. It's confusing. You know, a lot of the people are going to come on boats. The area is not really well documented where you are. And so I'd like to make it a bit smaller and not have so many zones to fish. The second thing I'd like to say is that make it to 50 meters, which is consistent with the DLNR 30 by 30 plan. The 100 meters, all the species that I can see, except for ʻŌpelu, they're all near shore species. I don't see the reason to go out to 100 fathoms. Even though ʻŌpelu guys would say that most of the ʻŌpelu is going to 60 fathoms or less. And I will say this, on the west side of the Big Island, we have so many rules already, so many areas that are closed and regulations here and regulations there. As a commercial fisherman, and I keep hearing this term sustainability, I'm not too sure what sustainability means. Anybody want to come fish with me? I can show you plenty fish. I'm all for conservation, but then at the same time, what we don't see here is enforcement. And as a fisherman going back all the way to the 60s, we talked about this back then and we're still talking about it. You can make all the rules you want, but if you're not getting enforcement, we're not gonna solve the real issue for those that abuse the system. So as we look at this, I would just like to see a smaller area, consistent rules to the whole side, make it simple for the enforcement guys, make it simple for the fishermen. And let's not forget, commercial fishermen, we supply fish for everybody. It's our living. You may think about sustainability as something that's great. We want sustainability too. It means we can continue fishing. We all have the same goals. So, you know, let's all work together, protect the resource for sure, but then let's make sure that people can still eat fish and not have to import it from somewhere else. So please, let's make it a little smaller. Let's make it a little shallower. Let's make the rules clear and simple for everybody to understand. That's all I'm asking for. Mahalos.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Leitani Peltier.
Aloha mai, Leitani Peltier on behalf of the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, CNHA. Our offices are located in Kapolei, Oahu, although I am currently zooming in from beautiful, sunny Paololo Valley. CNHA offers testimony in strong support of the Miloli'i community and their proposed rules, as well as the recommendations made by the lineal descendants of Miloli'i regarding the Pakuʻikuʻi Rest Area and the species rule. CNHA is just super appreciative of all the effort that Miloli'i community has put into this process throughout the years. As was mentioned in the beginning of this meeting, it's been well over a decade since the legislature designated the Miloli'i CBSFA. So this progress is exciting and encouraging. This is a great example of how a community can work, not just to protect the resources, but also to help put in place a legal framework that future generations will be able to draw upon as well. And throughout this entire process, as the community has brought to the present the voices of their kupuna for the benefit of future generations, you know, it's just a real chicken skin thing to think about. Big mahalos also to the DAR staff and everyone else on the administrative side who has helped to steward this process along and who are working to protect and preserve our precious natural resources for future generations. Mahalo nui for the opportunity to provide this testimony. Aloha.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Eric Ko.
Hello, my kako. My name is Eric Ko. I'm zooming in from Wailupe, Oahu right now, and I stand in strong support of the Miloli Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area as presented and as amended by the lineal descendants of Miloli, Laila, Uilani, Kaimi, and others. Thank you, Brian and DLNR, for creating this space. It's been a long time coming. These regulations are not only to be supported for what they will do, but they should also be celebrated for what they represent. Miloli has come together for common purpose to ensure fishing practices that will help sustain reef resources and perpetuate community. While this is about safeguarding physical sustenance, it is equally about ensuring cultural sustenance. We know from our longstanding relationships with members of the Miloli community that this is an effort that has spanned generations. Those who were once appeal in the community when these conversations began are now leaders behind the rules package being presented. Lay, Melissa, Kaimi, and others. I admire you. Those kupuna who led the start of this effort are sadly no longer with us to see this day, but are nevertheless remembered and honored within what is being set forward. And I've been delighted to see pictures of Uncle Walter and Uncle Waha and others behind you folks. You make them proud today. And those who are youth now will be empowered by these rules to be future leaders in this community and continue the practices, traditions, and values unbroken through many lifetimes. These CBSFA rules will help to sustain reefs based on proven traditional practice. They will also continue to hold these individuals, families, and generations together as a community. We further recognize that for the rest of us, this is not an effort to be excluded, but rather an invitation to join in those traditional fishing practices when we are in the area and contribute to sustainability. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Ku'ule Rogers.
Aloha. I'm Ku'ule Rogers. I'm from the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology in Kaneohe, and I'm here to support the Miloli CBSFA and to testify to the efficacy of a CBSFA. So to determine the efficacy of the Ha'ena CBSFA, since its inception in 2016, our UH lab, in collaboration with DAR, conducted 740 transects over the past 6 years. So this design provided extremely robust, statistically valid results. After just the first 2 years, there was a statistically higher abundance and biomass of fishes. Selected fishes showed a significant increase inside the CBSFA boundaries as compared to outside, showing a strong reserve effect. And a larger portion of these species were reaching reproductive maturity. Then there was a drop in fishes that occurred when a massive freshwater flood event happened in 2018. But we were able to separate the effects of management regulations from the environmental impacts. We were surveying another North Shore Kauai site, Pila'a, at the time, and this site showed similar patterns to Ha'ena. Also linking this to the flood, shallow sites with higher freshwater impacts were affected, while deeper sites showed no statistical change. At the shallow Ha'ena site, salinity-sensitive urchin populations declined by 67%, fish communities by 42%, and there was extensive coral bleaching. The efficacy of the CBSFA, though, continued in the years following the sharp decline, again showing increases following the same pattern of the early years. Thus, we have determined that the overall management strategies employed at the Ha'ena CBSFA have achieved their goals. A major strength of the local management system is the ability to be place-specific and sensitive to local issues. It utilizes the local knowledge passed down through generations. A major strength of DAR is its ability to adapt to changing social, political and economic conditions and to respond to local threats. DAR also has the potential to adapt regulations to deal with major advances in fishing technology that have eliminated many of the controls that prevented overexploitation in past times. A CBSFA provides a collaboration of both these systems to better protect the marine resources for all involved. I just want to say that past studies have shown it is effective, and I pledge my full support to the proposed Miloli'i CBSFA. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Austin Kaleohano. Are you with us, Austin? Okay, we'll go to Emma Anders next.
Aloha mai kākou. My name is Emma Anders, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii Conservation Alliance Foundation. I reside on Oahu, and I'm joining today from Palolo Valley. I'm here today in support of the rules for the Miloli'i CBSFA as proposed by the community. The foundation supports the work of the Hawaii Conservation Alliance to provide unified leadership and collaborative action to conserve and restore native ecosystems and the unique biodiversity of our islands. In 2018, the Hawaii Conservation Alliance adopted a position paper strongly supporting community-based management as a critical resource management strategy. As we all know, the biocultural resources of Hawaii are essential to the well-being of our residents and economy, and at the same time are facing serious and growing threats. We must urgently deploy the tools at our disposal, including CBSFA designation. The Miloli'i rules package and narrative demonstrate that the community has conducted a robust process to develop this proposal, utilizing the best available generational and contemporary research and the values of Malama Aina. Adoption of this rule package is consistent with the intent and purpose of the CBSFA legislation and the conservation goals that we at the Hawaii Conservation Alliance Foundation share with the Division of Aquatic Resources. On behalf of the HCAF today, I would just like to strongly support the adoption of the administrative rules relating to Miloli'i CBSFA as proposed by the community. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Mehana Vaughn.
Ano ai me ke aloha, e Brian e na hoa aina na kupa aina o Miloli'i, hauʻoli no wau e kuma anei me o kou. My name is Mehana Vaughn. I come from Haleʻa, Kauai, and I'm a professor of community-based resource management, co-management, and sustainable coastal and watershed management at the University of Hawaii. I would first like to say that the kupuna and ohana of Miloli'i have been so influential in my own life path and work and learning, and in this CBSFA movement over the past 25 years, and of course for many generations before that. I would like to mention the opportunity to have worked with Anakala Walter Paulo and Anakala Eddie Ka'anana, and they're sharing with us of their first kuleana as keiki, even before school in the morning, to make palu, to grate pala'ai pumpkin, and to make the palu, to feed the ko'a, to feed the ʻŌpelu. And their stories have taught us of the connection of mauka to makai, of farming and fishing, and that lawai'a pono is not just about harvest, but it is about actually cultivating and feeding the ocean. Miloli'i was established as a CBSFA in 2005, and those kupuna, because of the abundance of their ko'a through these feedings, they were tasked, they had to, one of their early efforts was to work on banning of chop or meat baits that were used at the ko'a, as commercial fishers would come and be drawn to that abundance and then use baits that would actually scare away the ʻŌpelu by attracting predators. And this is an example of how long they've been working on these efforts. And their teachings of ko'a and of reciprocity that are reflected in the rules proposed by the families that have been responsible for caring for these ko'a and for Miloli'i's coastline across generations. These rules honor the place-specific nature of resource management in Hawaii, through the range of puʻuhonua and protected areas identified, each of which has nuanced regulations according to place and habitat. They reflect years of community input, engagement with diverse stakeholder groups, and changes in the rule package to incorporate this input. I especially support the proposed amendments, including the Pākuʻikuʻi Rest Area, advanced by the lineal descendants of the Ohana of Miloliʻi. These rules also reflect the evolution of CBSFA rules packages across our Hawaii communities, whose impacts we are already seeing in the abundance of not only of our fishery, but our community's ongoing learning and care here in Ha'ena, Kauai. Miloliʻi and the Ohana of Kapalilua have also been exemplary in their education efforts, their teaching across generations, which is evident in this package and this work. Please approve these rules along with their proposed amendments. Eo e na kupa o Miloliʻi, e na aina momona o Kapalilua, e ola e na kupuna. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Our next testifier up is Inga Gibson.
Aloha mai kako, Inga Gibson from Oahu, also representing For the Fishes, Maui-based nonprofit with members and supporters across the state and many friends in Ohana in Miloliʻi. Speaking in strong support of the CBSFA and also the proposed amendments discussed earlier. I just want to really send our mahalos to the Miloliʻi community for this unprecedented community outreach that has been conducted over this more than a decade. It's a historic moment, but at the same time, it's really unfortunate that it has taken so long to get to where we are today. I think that it's important to note that these rules, these proposals are not confusing, not to those who care, not to those who care about the community. This has been, a model effort in community involvement, a model effort in reaching out to partners from various areas, including commercial fisheries. I have worked with the Kaupiko, Ohana, and others for more than a decade on the illegal aquarium fishing trade, which has impacted Miloliʻi significantly, along with other significant resource violations that, of course, are not just illegal and criminal, but also completely offensive to Native Hawaiian community. We really believe that this model, this CBSFA that has come together is really exemplary in combining Western science, the work that's coming out of the Miloliʻi community with ASU and Asner Lab, combining this Western modern contemporary science with Kanaka tradition and culture is really the model. And I would hope that DAR and DLNR and all policymakers really put a focus on place and on community-based input. It should not be ever after the fact that you're hearing from those most impacted. I also wanted to note that while West Hawaii has had its regional fishery management area, as Uncle Charlie Young said earlier, this builds on it, but it also provides a lot more protections that have not been granted. 15 years ago when that was enacted, it was great at that time, but it is not enough. And we need so much more, especially in light of climate change and all the other impacts. So very strong support, commend the community for this effort. And again, this is about Aina Mamona and abundance. Sustainability is dependent upon who you ask. This is about abundance and the future and protecting
Mahalo. Our next testifier is Amanda Lanes. You with us, Amanda? I see you on the Zoom. Maybe we'll circle back to you. Creighton Lind.
Hello.
Hello.
Kawiki. Yeah, that's my college name. Part college, part Hawaiian, part Filipino, part Japanese. Just a mix up here in Hanamaui, Kīpāhoehoe. Told everybody I was going to testify, but I thought I show up because the meeting was canceled or changed. Anyway, Miloli, Imua, aloha, all the kupunas down there, from Malinohana and Kīpāhoehoe. As far as the DAR staff, I want to recommend that you guys stick with the RU package that was originally offered or sent to your offices, and I hope the board will also stick with that too. Yeah, there's a lot of changes going on, you know, from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. But let's keep it simple. I'm here to testify on behalf of Miloli, and me and my ohana, my dad, my mom, my 10 brothers and sisters, we're in full support of Miloli. Go get them. Wipon ke aloha. Aloha.
Mahalo. So that was our last testifier on the list. If there's anyone we missed, please feel free to turn off your camera and unmute and provide your testimony. Okay, maybe we'll give it another little bit here to see if anyone else joining us today would like to testify. Otherwise, we'll be concluding the testimony portion of the hearing. I'll also just note that if persons were unable to attend today or wishing to present additional comments, you may submit written testimony to us via email or letter by Friday, May 6th. So there's still time to provide written testimony, and that can be emailed to us at dlnr.aquatics@hawaii.gov, and that email address should be in the chat as well. You can also mail your testimonies to Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Aquatic Resources at 1151 Punch Bowl Street, room 330, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. But this is our last call for public testimony, and I'll just kind of describe what are the next steps in our decision making on this proposal. So based on the testimonies presented to the department, we'll submit its findings and recommendations to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. So this is combining both oral testimony and written testimony that we received. And then we'll take the proposal back to the Land Board. And if it's approved by the board, the Department of Attorney General will conduct a final legal review. And then if that is approved, the proposed rule will be given to the governor for final approval. And should the governor grant approval, certified copies will be filed with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and after 10 days, it will become effective as law. And so that's pretty much the process moving forward. I'm just going to make one last call for any oral testimony that folks weren't able to testify. And hearing none, I will adjourn this public hearing. I just want to thank everyone for participating in this public process. And on behalf of the Board of Land and Natural Resources and DAR, thank you for attending this virtual public hearing. This public hearing is now adjourned at 4:39 p.m. And thank you again, and have a great evening. Mahalo.